Hi, welcome to KnitFix and Chill with Jen and Bess. This is a knitting podcast where we talk about fit, techniques, everything relating to knitting, and generally have a great time. So we are so happy that you're here. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about how two designers collaborating together can still end up with a garment that does not fit. and why my test knit of the Ruffle Addendum did not work out the way that I hoped. And hi, I'm Bess. I'm a knitwear designer and artist.
Yeah, I'm Jen. I'm a knitwear designer and educator. And we both do a lot in the size inclusion and better fit space. So we're very excited to have this conversation. We think it's a good one. So give it a listen, give it a watch, and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, roll it. So, hey, Jen, what is your tea?
Literally, I have black chai today. I drank mine with milk. And I was feeling a little feminine today, so I have this like extra little teacup situation going on. So I'm actually going to be literally drinking this tea because I'm half losing my voice. And as far as like my kind of knitting tea goes, girl, I'm hot. Like I'm beginning to be of a certain age. Like I'm not getting the flashes, but like I'm hot like all the time. And so that's on my mind. So yeah. I'm glad that we're going to be talking about tank tops today, and I'm planning to spend most of this episode in my bare arms, and I'm looking forward to it. But, you know, it's also on my mind a lot as I think about like, okay, like I know I prefer knitting fingering weight garments and, you know, maybe thinking a little bit more about meeting my audience where they are as I'm doing that, and maybe like what kinds of silhouettes might be appropriate for those weight garments, even in wintertime for people like me who are a little hot. How about you? What's your tea?
I mean, well, first off, I kind of love your tea. I am not yet of a certain age, but I am Italian and I'm hot all the time. My girlfriend says it's because I'm Italian. I'm a hot-blooded Italian woman. And so, yeah, kind of same. Even DK weight sweaters, I love them, but they're like a coat to me. And so like fingering weight is where it's at. But sometimes people are intimidated because it's like more stitches, right? But when you have a garment that's more usable, it's better. And on that note about usable garments, this week, what I'm thinking about, well, my literal tea today is a lady gray, and it's not in a really fancy pot. It's just in my regular e-mug. But I love lady gray. If you've never had it, it's like Earl Grey, but there's lavender, I think, instead of bergamot. And so that's just my little note. And my knitting tea is, I'm really thinking about how measuring yourself is a way of loving yourself more. Something I've realized in my own body is that, like this tissue right here, I'm squeezing that little soft part between my armpit and my breast, which, if you don't know this, that is typically breast tissue, right? That's like on the side or whatever. But it's something that I've always felt just like, what is that? I feel that I'm a little extra juicy there. And I had this realization this week that we're going to be talking about in this episode, because I have a deep armhole and full breasts, that basically I get a little extra to squeeze in that armpit area because my boobs and my armpit are like smashing together all the time. And it was liberating because I just like had that dawn of like, oh, it's because of my proportions and has nothing to do with my strength or anything else, right? So yeah. I think that sometimes people are afraid of really getting to know their own measurements because like, I don't know, we think we're going to learn something that we don't like about ourselves that we don't already notice when we look at our own bodies in the mirror. But the more I have come to understand measurements, body charts, and my own body, the less insecure I feel when I look in the mirror, the more I can just see how my own body like comes together. And it feels good. It feels good.
I think that's a great preface for this episode because we're going to be talking numbers. We're going to be talking about our specific measurements and the way that different measurements play into garments. And that might be a conversation that's uncomfortable for some people. So it's good to know that we are going into this with like a just the facts, ma'am, kind of approach, that we all have numbers that are associated with our silhouettes, and that if we're going to try and get a great fit, we need to have some working comfort with those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's do it. Let's go there. So this is kind of a dry run, and this week's episode is a little bit of a template for something that we really want to offer for all of y'all, including ourselves. Today we're using myself as an example and the Ruffle Addendum, which is the tank that both Jen and I are wearing today. It's one of Jen's designs. But what we're looking at, I've already knit this garment. So what we're going to be talking about is like, what about the garment is working well for me and where I could have made modifications so that I would have a better fitting tank, because this tank doesn't fit me perfectly, right? That's okay. And let's talk about why, right? But in the future, we'd love to invite y'all to be on the episode yourself, like a guest, and talk about either a pattern that you've already knit that you would like to kind of do a postmortem and figure out what is right and what might not be right, like where you could have changed sizes or shapes a little bit. But it can also be before you knit something, which might be the most useful if there's a sweater or a garment that you'd like to make and you want to go over the schematic and your own measurements and like how you can get your perfect custom fit. That is going to be an episode that we offer from time to time, as long as you're all down. I don't know if we want to just always look at something on my body or Jen's body, but so we're excited, and I hope you'll send us your thoughts and your feedback on this episode after the fact so that we can know if this is a good point for you to jump into.
Yeah, definitely. And also last episode, we talked a lot about what we were going to talk about this episode, which is kind of choosing a size and the relationship between upper bust and full bust. So we got a couple letters about this topic that we saved from last episode that I'd like to read right now. Awesome. So we heard from Celine. Celine said, I'd love to hear more about choosing a size based on upper bust instead of full bust and the thought process behind it. Also, how bust darts, despite not adding width, can help accommodate larger busts. I love everything that Celine is asking. These are some of my favorite topics. And then Lori shared with us her question. She says, I know you suggest upper bust for determining size. How does that work if your widest part is not your bust? Like if you're apple or pear shaped?
Good question.
Yeah, so that's what those are the two letters that we wanted to share. We're going to do what we normally do, which is we're going to have our little chat, and then we'll come back and we'll make sure that we answered those questions up one side and down the other. So, yeah.
So let's talk about the Ruffle Addendum. So the Ruffle Addendum is a really nice, versatile kind of shell, right? Which is like an old school name for a tank with a wider strap. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, it's kind of like a formal tank top.
Right. Like I remember in the 90s,
yeah,
it's a little officey, but in the 90s, when I was growing up in Connecticut and I was like really into J. Crew, I remember looking at like twin sets, you know, like they would have like a cardigan and then a matching shell, which was just like a tank that went underneath a cardigan. And I was like really into that idea as a young person, which is why I was excited to knit this Ruffle Addendum, because it pairs really well with my Julie cardigan, which we actually released these patterns together. They were knit with the same wonderful yarn, Hummingbird from Sweet Sparrow. And so that was the intention for me, was like, this will be a great layering piece. And it's half silk, half superwash merino. It's really soft. And in the transitional seasons here in Florida, I make a lot of use out of wool tanks and tees because they do a better job in like transitional days that we might get like a 30-degree shift at this time of year. So yeah, so speaking of being hot.
Yeah. I'll bring my own temperature changes. You live somewhere with temperature changes, and we will both meet in the middle at wool t-shirts and tank tops.
Exactly.
Perfect.
And so the Ruffle Addendum has a V. It has a tie that was optional. A little I-cord edging, could trim it off without the tie. There's an optional ruffle. There are optional bust darts provided. And I was technically a test knitter for this project, right?
Yeah. It started out that way.
So this would have been my third test knit with Jen. And what Jen and I discovered in this test is that we have very different shapes between Jen and myself. And what I really discovered and what we've talked about since is that like, that's especially, I feel like, in the armhole area.
In the critical fit areas, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in my first test with one of Jen's designs, I knit Local Meadow, which is a drop shoulder and it's oversized. So there was very little I needed to do. I did not make any adjustments. And I knit the size C, which would have probably been based on my full bust. For that drop shoulder, it all worked out great. And I do wear that sweater all the time. My second test knit for Jen was Letters from the Open Road, which is like a zip up. And I freaking love the way that mine came out. And I did actually modify it. I knit a size B body, which is based on my upper bust, and a size C armhole and sleeve because I checked. And I was like, that armhole's not going to be big enough for me. And then I signed up for this test. And basically what happened is that my family went through personal crisis. I had to drop out of the test and set my Ruffle Addendum aside. And Jen, of course, was really gracious. And it was like 4 or 5 months later that I picked it up, being like halfway through the back, and finished it. And I'm not sure if I had knit the armhole before or after I set it down, but it was definitely after, like,
the shit hit the fan.
Hit the fan, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we swear? I guess we swear sometimes.
We're swearing.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, in my real life, I definitely swear. So I just forgot a few things because I knit this in a size B. And my intention originally was to add both bust darts and to modify the armhole. And then like, hey, we can be informed, great people, and things can happen. And you set a project down a long time, you come back to it, whether or not you have notes. It's sort of like, who knows at that point, right? We've all done this. I think it's a common knitting experience. So this is a straight up size B with no modification. And what we're excited to talk about is like why it doesn't fit me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think this is a really, I mean, you talked some about moving back and forth between sizes and how you're choosing the right size based on construction and based on your measurements. And so in our patterns, we both recommend that knitters choose a size based on their upper chest or upper bust instead of their full bust, right? So yeah, I'm going to dive into that real quick because I have our questions asked about this distinction. And it's something that you and I have come to build all of our fitting guidance in our patterns on. And so if you are using full bust as a measurement, you will measure your body at a point that is the fullest part of your breast area or chest area, depending on your build. And it will be a line that is parallel to the ground. Now, to get your upper chest measurement instead, you'll slide that measuring tape up to your armpits. The tape will come across your back parallel to the ground, and then our armpits are kind of angled. So it's going to come up at an angle under the armpits and then come around in the front and meet in this area. And the reason that we prefer that measurement is because it's a better indicator of the key fit measurements. So a sweater, we start fitting garments. When we talk about fit, we start from the neck down and we solve fitting issues as they come up. And so the first thing we want to fit for is the top thing, right? So neck, shoulders, underarm. That's kind of the shoulder girdle yoke area of the body. And getting a great fit depends on that. So breast tissue is real subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens when, let's say this, so in my case, the upper chest and shoulder and arm area is a little too small. So you can kind of imagine what that means. It's like a little pinchy in my armpits. But what happens when that is too big? Like if I had knit this according to my full bust, which would have been the size C, Jen, what do you think might have happened?
Well, I think the whole top of it would be sloppy and it would hang off, right? So
yes.
Yeah, we can change our bra and have a different full bust size. That does not mean that our body has changed shape. The underlying structure of our torso remains the same. And so two things happen when we choose, two things can happen when we choose on full bust. If we have a cup size that is smaller than the designer's size chart thinks it will be and predicts, then more of that full bust measurement is going to be taken up with torso. It's a larger torso and less with breast. And therefore you end up in a pattern that's too small for you. And that could be something you would see whiskering in the underarm area. It would be tight and strained across the upper back. The neck might be choking you. And on the other hand, we have the thing that you've run into, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in the past, so again, this is not what happened in this garment, but in a lot of garments that I've knit and even in garments that I've purchased, like my whole life, things just fall off of one shoulder, right? And like, there's something that's kind of cute about that. Like, I don't know. I guess I've learned to be like, that's just my style. It's like one shoulder out. Because it is such a prevalent problem in my wardrobe, both store-bought and hand knit, that things fall off of my shoulders. And that is because oftentimes if I'm not custom making the garment for myself, if I follow a standard size chart, I am going to be a lot wider in the full bust than would be predicted for my shoulders. And so necklines become too wide, and I don't like a close neckline. Like most of the things I wear or buy have a deeper scoop, have a wider neckline. And so that combination of something being slightly too big in the upper bust or in the upper chest and having a wide neckline is like a surefire way to have one shoulder out all the time.
Absolutely. And in knitting patterns, we're all grading on very similar numbers, even if they're not exactly the same, but there's an implied relationship between the upper chest and the cup size. So in our size charts, there will be like an A cup at the bottom and up to an EF cup at the top. And we know that that's not necessarily how bodies work. You know, you can, and so you have people in these smaller bodies who are surprised to find that they have a large cup for their size in a size chart. And they've never considered that they might be busty, or people who are in larger bodies who have a smaller cup size than is expected. But because they're in a larger body, they've never considered I might be small in a measurement,
right,
compared to the size chart's expectations.
Yeah, sometimes when we talk about cup size, I think even that can be misleading because, like, guess who has historically never worn the right size bra? Not only me, but like maybe 80% of people who wear bras, right? And some of that is like Candace, my girlfriend, and I were actually having an amazing conversation last night about bra size and the fact that I think my real bra size is one that is rarely carried in most stores because it would be like a smaller band and a larger cup. And so in order to make my own life easier, when I have bought bras with cup sizes like that, I have usually purchased a band size up and a cup size down, right?
Yeah.
Like
they call them sister sizes, and they should just call them shitty sizes. Yeah.
It's right, because it's not the same thing, because you're talking about, again, like how much of that measurement is boob and how much of it is chest. And and it's not intuitive. Like actually in the prep work for this episode, I realized that both my full bust and upper bust measurements are larger even than 6 months ago when I sized for this sweater, but I have overall lost a fair amount of weight, like for myself, and because like the crisis in my family ended or has become more manageable, and I'm like back to my more regular life, right? And so although like my waist measurement has gone down because I am stronger and working out, my chest is bigger and my breasts are bigger because the muscle has built up there. So, and on top of that, like my full bust can change by an inch or two depending on what time of the month it is, correct? Is that, I don't think only me.
No, not only you.
So if you're choosing your size based on that measurement, like what time of the month are you choosing to measure your breasts? That might be very different. And then like right now, my full breast measurement might even put me in like a size D, or it would definitely be in the size C, but my upper bust still puts me in a size B.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to do a bonus tip that comes from my wardrobe class.
Oh, do it.
Which is, you know, I had somebody who was a participant in one of my classes, and they were a farmer. So they worked a lot of manual labor in the summer. And then at the end of the summer, they would be like, okay, now I get to knit. And they would take their measurements. And in January, your sweaters wouldn't fit. So measure yourself several times per year. Write down what your winter profile is versus your summer profile, so that when you're choosing garments for a season and you're planning ahead, you're choosing things that will fit you when it's time, when that sweater is finished.
Right. Because we're knitting for a season ahead. And that person sounds like they have a fairly predictable cycle in their body. Not everyone does, of course. Like, however, the more often you measure yourself, the easier it is to see patterns and to know, like for me, because I can't be like, at this time of year, I'm usually smaller, and at this time of year, I'm usually fuller. But what I can do is be like, well, I know that my typical range is here. And so if I want something that's going to fit me best most of the time, that's where I want to be, you know?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So does that cover talking about upper bust versus full bust?
Yeah, I think so. What was the other question we had? Yeah, I think
that's pretty fair. Question. But I would like to add in here that one of the reasons that choosing based on full bust seemed like the right thing for me for so long is my armhole depth. Because and my biceps. Because I have a longer than predicted armhole. This is where it was really interesting for me and Jen to compare, right? Because she wears a size or two or whatever larger than me. However, your armhole depth is 5.5, right?
Yeah, I have. Yes. I have been talking to you, Bess, and I was like, you know, I think I'm going to stop putting. The standard guidance is to put about an inch of ease under the underarm for most constructions. And I was like, I think I'm going to stop doing that because like, look how big it is. And then we're like, wait a minute. And she's like, well, don't do that. Your sweaters barely fit me. Like, look at my ruffle addendum. Right. And so even though these sweaters have been graded with the same amount of ease, if you're listening, instead of watching, I'm showing that the underarm on mine, my arm only fills up half the hole. And then I was like, well, let me see how I compare to my size guide, because my underarm, it turns out, is much shorter than predicted. for my body size. You know, I'm somebody, I consider it to be an apple build. My torso in general is several sizes larger than my limbs would predict. And so, yeah, I have smaller arms. Mine match the size chart. Everybody who's out there like, designers write these skinny arms, those would fit me. And I have a shorter than expected. I don't design that way because I hear y'all, but I do have a shorter than expected depth in my armhole.
And I'm the opposite. So my armhole is 6.5, and that's like not the size that I would knit. That's the actual size of my armhole is 6.5, which is, I think, like an inch or maybe even more larger than predicted in most body charts. Mm-hmm. And my bicep measurement is also like at least a full inch, maybe 2 full inches larger than would be predicted in most body charts for my size. So those tight sleeve sweaters, they're really tight on me, and I hate that. And if you've knit my sweater and you're like, this sleeve is kind of baggy, that's why. So like, I'm not going to expect Jen to design sweaters that don't fit her because her armhole is more shallow. So like, she deserves a tank that fits her. However, Jen, on the same note, would not expect me to design with those arm and armhole measurements that do not fit my own body because I wouldn't be able to fit my arms in there. So these are like, touching on our last episode, ways that designers customize their size charts to reflect their own bodies. And, you know, it's sometimes people may split the difference. Like, I can't say what everyone does, but what you can do is just know that and check, like measure so your armhole depth measurement is basically starting at the top of your shoulder and just going straight down to where your flesh ends and your armpit, like that space begins, right?
Yeah, we call that a caliper measurement, right? So it's not a measuring tape that's following the curve. It's a straight down, as if you were holding up like a C-clamp and measuring the distance. A lot of times I'll recommend that people put a ruler or a pencil under their arm and then kind of stand against the wall and have somebody help them measure what that drop is so that they're not kind of doing the curve or holding it out, or so it's not so subjective.
Right. It's hard to measure your own armholes. It's hard to measure your upper bust even if you're moving your own arms around, because these places are going to change shape and size a little based on how your muscles are contracted. And something that's important to note is that even in a tank, so my size B in the Ruffle Addendum, the armhole is 6.5. So it's the exact measurement that my arm is. So if you can see my Ruffle Addendum, if I put my arm out or up, it's like, okay. But when my arms are down at my side, it is pinching up into my armpit. Yeah. So not to a point where it's horrible, but it makes it so that I wouldn't enjoy wearing this all day, because all day it would be like armpit on wool right up in there. And yeah. And my sweat would get all over it and etc. Right. It's just,
plus it's just uncomfortable to feel bound up somewhere. Like nobody wants that. That's not the dream. No. That's not why we make our own clothes. Right.
So you want like, I usually give an inch of ease in the armhole. I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Half an inch would be like kind of pushing it, but it could be okay. But an inch is the construction, preferred.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. In a raglan or a yoke sweater, you want more than that, right?
I feel like you can do less in a raglan. Because the whole point of the raglan is that it comes across to the neck, and so you have much wider roundabout anyway. Whereas like in a set-in, it's right there at the armhole, even when you are not moving. Right. You know what I mean? Okay. Yeah. And if it's a layering piece, it would go more. Yeah. And I did not adjust my size chart to make the arm side deeper, which is why when you see my garments, they're down low on me, because I knit those to the sample size without modifying it for my body. And because I'm an outlier, I have left that part of the size chart alone. I do not. Yeah. So
Yeah,
don't
that's
expect to
like
come here and find short armholes. Expect an average, but don't expect it to be long either. Yeah.
Right. But if you're above average, like I am, then I do need to modify not just Jen, but like a lot of sweater armholes, because if they're following standard ease, it's going to pinch me there. Plus the bicep circumference goes up with sizes. So if it's a sweater with sleeves, like for my letters test knit for Jen, it was a very easy modification for me to just choose to knit the depth of the size C armhole with the size C sleeve. And that's one of the reasons that seamed pieces can be easier also, y'all, because that was a seamed garment. I didn't have to worry about like at the same time as and changing any of those directions around. I just knit, you know, there was a little bit of at the same time as where you're doing the neck and the sleeves at once, but very little. I just worked the armhole decreases for a size C and knit the length of a size C for the armhole where it says like knit until you have XX inches, which might have made my neckline, you know, a touch deeper, but then that's something I like. Although on that one, it didn't. It was a high.
You're done shaping that armhole by the time you get to the neckline.
That's true. If it were like a V neck, then, well, like this. So for the ruffle addendum, I could have very easily just knit the size C armhole depth by knitting straight at the top of the garment, at the top of the front and back for a little bit longer, which would have made this V-neck a little deeper. But in my case, I would have preferred that anyway. If you were trying to do that and not add depth to your neckline, then I guess you would want to add those extra rows in before the neck shaping. Is that what you would say, Jen? Yeah. But whatever you do to the front, you have to do to the back. So whether it's a seamless or a seamed knit, if you're talking about a satin sleeve, you're knitting the front and the back separately. So you have to remember that you did that in order to still get that armhole to match. Although it's a little easier to see, like, does this match?
Or even add extra in the back. Most bodies are actually longer in the back than they are in the front. Think about the S-curve of a skeleton when you see it from the side, right?
That's true.
And most knitters will have a better fit if they lengthen that yoke. You just have to address that if you're setting in a sleeve or a cap by working a couple short rows so that that side also is longer. We don't see that much in knitting patterns. I don't think I've ever seen it in a knitting pattern because knitting stretches and we can usually deal with it. But when I talk to knitters who have a neckline that's choking them, half the time that's alleviated by the fact that they really need either a high rounded back adjustment, and that's being compounded by the fact that sweaters don't add that to start with.
Right. Yeah. So if you had a little more tissue in your upper back, it would exacerbate any neckline issues. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and the exception to this is when people add short row shaping to the bottom of a yoke of a sweater. Because then what they are doing is they're building up that back yoke length.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's different than doing short rows for the back neck, correct?
Yes. Despite what some people will tell you, it accomplishes a very different thing. But both are ways to alleviate some of that problem with things tugging at your front neck. Yes.
Yeah. We can definitely have an episode on back neck shaping, but that's not this episode as much.
No.
So did we cover, so finally I want to talk about the bust darts, because I did plan to add them because in this size I do need them. How much ease is written into this pattern? Like 2 inches?
Something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah. So a closer fit, and you'll notice if you like look at my designs that I have often done a really generous amount of ease, even for a set-in sleeve. Like a lot of times I'm doing like 4 inches of ease for a set-in sleeve, which means that sometimes you have to do more extreme armhole shaping to get, you know, to pull it into your upper chest measurement. However, again, like something I've realized is like, oh, I like that because then there's room for my boobs without me doing that bust dart. Although even with 4 inches, I can probably benefit from doing bust darts. So I'll stand up a little bit so that if you're watching this, you can really see, and I'll describe that. Basically, my ruffle addendum is very short in the front. I am wearing, can you see me, Jen? I can't.
Oh yeah, I can see you.
Okay. I am wearing high-waisted leggings that come up well above my navel and sit like at my natural waistline. And my ruffle addendum is probably 1.5 inches or even 2 inches higher than the waistline of my pants in the front. In the back, it sits right at the waistline, slightly below. So that's where I would want this tank to sit, because it's already a cropped. I think there was more than one length, but I knit the cropped length. And as it's already a crop, riding up this extra amount in the front, that is just aesthetically not what I want from like a silk tank that has a more formal fit. It looks a little funny because my boobs are taking up like more than 50% of the garment, right? So what's a bust dart then? Like, to answer some of Celine's question, people think like, oh, I have larger breasts, I need more width at the breast. However, Jen, what is the bust dart really doing, and like, how does it work?
Yeah, so there are two things that are true when we have breasts. One is that our circumference is wider there. And the other is that the length from our high inner neck point to our waist is longer, right? So they're circles-ish, and we get both longer and wider. The thing with the getting wider issue is that if you imagine somebody in profile, the point at which they are that widest circumference is very brief. Yeah. You know, if we are 24 inches from our shoulder to the bottom of our sweater, the point in that sweater at which we are those extra inches wide is very brief. However, the length issue is an issue the whole way down. So there are two ways to deal with this. And there are times when you might want to deal with a full bust adjustment laterally by adding width briefly and then bringing it back. But that can be really fussy and can create odd shaping. A much easier way to do it is just to deal with the fact that you need that extra width. And because knitting is stretchy, it's often perfect. Yeah.
Because this doesn't feel tight around my breasts. It feels tight in my underarm. But what's happening is that my breasts are just not allowing it to come down, right?
Yeah. I'm going to show up too and show you mine, right? Because this was the last sweater top I knit myself without adding bust darts. I put them in the pattern because I was like, oh, the people want these. I'm going to give the people what they want. And then I finished mine and put it on, and I was like, I have regrets. I see why I needed this. So I'll show you mine too.
And that's how we learn from you, because we're like, oh, the people want bust darts, but I don't need those.
There you go. You can see that the back is parallel to the ground. And what ideally this whole thing would be parallel to the ground, but because we have this extra shaping here, it's not. And so I am also wearing something that is above my natural waist and my navel, or it's at my natural waist above my navel. And it just creates this shaping that is very informal, which does not match the style of the garment.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is that, like, I've knit myself way more casual tanks and tees, and this same thing has happened. But because of the casual fit, it has been like, that's fine. Plus, like, there's something about we get so used to clothes fitting us poorly that it doesn't even register anymore that like that's a thing. And it can be like, it can be cute to have like a high-low hem, but when it's not on purpose, it is much less likely to be like working out for you all the time.
Yeah. And there's another reason for bust darts that doesn't get talked about as much either. And this comes up a lot when people talk to me about how their necklines make them sad. And that's because when your sweater, it has like friction on the breasts and that's supporting some of the weight of the front, the back of the garment is then subjectively heavier, right? And then we've also taken out more of the fabric in the front for the front neck, hopefully. And so there's also less fabric in the front to start with. So now you've got some helpers holding up the front of your lighter sweater front, and all of a sudden that back is subjectively much heavier than the front, and it pulls your garment back even further.
Yeah. So if you're looking at us visually, the neckline is very different on me and on Jen. And I think we have in our notes here that the actual difference between these necklines is only 3/4 of an inch between these sizes, which is that how much you would typically have there, Jen?
Not anymore. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
talked
think.
about this. Yeah, you know, one of the things about being an independent pattern writer is that you are always learning about how things you would do differently. And I actually had a talk with a client about this week, and I'm glad to say that I could like refer back to this pattern and be like, you know, my thinking when I did this was I wanted the V to be a proportionate amount of the arm side depth, that armhole depth, so that it would feel equally open for every size. But it has not worked out that way because visually it's just very different. And so now, a little behind the scenes, I usually grade my necklines so that they're only vary an inch and a half or so across the whole grade. Yeah. So every 2 sizes maybe will be an 1/8 of an inch deeper. Because we don't want the larger sizes to feel like they're visually unbalanced in comparison to the smaller sizes with that ratio of body to neck. But yeah,
we want it to look like the same garment no matter what size you knit, right?
But even looking at these, you would not say that looks like a 3/4 inch difference. You would say that looks like a 3-inch difference.
Yeah, it looks a lot different. And sometimes that can be proportions, but I am pretty short and Jen is tall. So like if it were just proportions, mine should look deeper than Jen's. This is because of this issue that Jen is describing, that because the full bust adjustment was not made and my full bust doesn't have enough space, it's pulling the garment up. And so there's actually like a fair amount of loose fabric in the upper chest of my garment, and that is because my neckline's getting pulled up. So if I had enough fabric to go over my breasts in the front, that wouldn't happen, correct?
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier fitting.
Yeah. So then my neckline would like pull down, and now all of a sudden it doesn't look like crazy different from Jen's. Yeah.
And I don't think we have time to describe how to do a bust start, but we can tell you what it is, right? So what we're basically doing is we're working short rows. So rows that do not go all the way across or all the way around, depending on if you're working flat or in the round. But instead they work back and forth across a certain area so that you have more rows in the front only than you do in the sides and the back. And those will create a wedge shape, much like if you were sewing and you had a triangular wedge taken out the same way. And so they have that same look. But
what it's also creating is like a little hill, right? In the middle of the garment, like a very shallow, wide sleeve cap, right? Like a little hill shape that fills in that missing hill shape at the bottom. Is that
exactly? Yes. Yes. The shape that you're creating should exactly mimic the shape that's missing at the bottom of the garment, right? So you only need a 1/4 inch out at the sides maybe, and in the middle maybe you would want like 2 inches. And so that's that wedge, and then you've got a center that's like kind of a rectangular shape.
Yeah.
Very visual, very visual.
Now we're getting like fairly close to this being the boob episode, but part of me wants to say that we need like even more of a boob episode one day so that we can talk about this, because something I'm noticing now that I'm experimenting with bust arts for myself is that like my Hypatia pullover, which is 4 inches of ease at the bust, which again is like something I like because it's cozy sweatshirt and I don't notice how big my boobs are. I would still benefit from adding the full bust adjustment. However, I think I would probably work a different cup size if I were doing it in this garment versus in that garment because of the extra ease. And I'm not sure if that's like a no-no, because the way we measure for bust arts is more vertical, but depending on how much extra room you have in a garment, the bust art may be more or less necessary. And like in this garment with less ease, I'm really like, it's riding up maybe 2 whole inches in the front, which then I would choose cup size 2 would add like 2 inches. But in a garment that fits looser, I might only need 1 inch of extra space. So that's why like I offer usually 3 cup sizes, and I know Jen offers 2 or 3 depending
Depends
on the
on the
stitch
stitch
pattern, right?
pattern. I offer
Same.
up to 5 usually.
Oh, nice.
I'm
Of
trying to
course.
cover 5 to 6 inches of additional length in the upper sizes.
Yeah, because people need that. And again, this isn't about size. It's about its shape. It's the relationship between your full breast measurement and your upper breast measurement. So it's really how big your boobs are, and that's it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think so you're right. There are subjective lengths that we might add. I usually do that in the pattern. So we recommend measuring your distance from your inner neck point to your underbust in the front and the back, and then subtracting some amount, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to have too much fabric there and knitting stretches. So I usually recommend for a basic subtracting out 2 inches from that difference. 2 inches will stretch. It'll sort itself out. If I'm doing a slipperier fabric, I might recommend a little bit less because I think that's going to stretch a little bit more. Or if I'm doing a very high ease, I might say take out 2.5 inches because we don't need to add as much bust length. So I think that you can finesse that in the pattern writing when you're making recommendations about choosing a cup size.
Yeah. But I think it's also like with that extra length. So this is kind of, again, referencing Celine's question. With the extra length in the front, you will not feel as much like the fabric is being pulled width-wise either, because you've created like a little pocket where your boobs can live. Is that a fair way of describing? Yeah, you just let them sit in there.
Knitting just stretches. The fabric goes where it needs to go.
Right. Or it goes where it needs to go. And if you're in the wrong size, then you're getting a more shallow neckline like I am, or you're losing a lot of inches in the bottom, which is about, in this case, armhole depth and full bust width.
Let's talk about the trust fall part of choosing an upper chest size, which is
scary.
Going to answer Lori's question too, right? Which is like, okay, well, what happens when you choose on upper chest and you have outlier dimensions? So I will talk to knitters sometimes who are like, I want to choose a pattern based on my upper chest, but then it won't fit at the bust, right? I'll have negative ease there. And so then the knitter has a decision they get to make, right? Which is like, okay, how long in this pattern, in the length of this pattern, am I going to be that measurement? It's generally okay to have a little negative ease at the apex of the bust, as long as you've got plenty of room elsewhere. Even if it's a garment where they recommend positive ease, you're going to get that positive ease where it matters. And you'll have a little cling across the bust, but it's not a big deal. Or you can address some of that issue with bust darts. But like in general, we want to fit the upper part of the torso separately from the bust and then separately from the waist and hip. So if you have, we are not locked into knitting that straight tube from the underarms down. I do not knit a straight tube from the underarms down. You do not. We do different things. You tend to put in waist shaping. I tend to make sure I'm not doing any waist shaping and add hip shaping instead.
Which I do that sometimes too. It depends on the design. Yeah. But either way, we are not straight tube people. Because it's not generally, I don't think it's generally the best suit for the most people to have it go just straight. Yeah.
And most of our size charts have dimensions where the hip is larger than the bust. And all we see on the market are straight tube patterns. So, Lori, I think I would answer your question about, well, what if your bust is not your biggest measurement? I'm like, I think that that's the case for many, 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 many knitters. And we would definitely recommend addressing that one step at a time, from the upper yoke to the bust, to the belly, to the hip. Think about what kind of shaping you want to include for the pattern to get it to fit you perfectly.
Yeah, and it might just be extra increases along the side if it's an A-line shape. You can also add darts for the bum, for your belly, for any area of your body if you want that extra length. If things are riding up somewhere, then that's a good indication that darts could help. If it's just about adding extra width, then side seam increases are fairly easy to add. But here's the thing. If you do not choose based on your upper bust, if your hips are 3 sizes bigger than your upper bust predicts, then wearing a sweater that is 3 sizes too big in the shoulders is going to most likely look or feel sloppy. It's not going to be the best fit. So when we measure based on upper bust, you're measuring more closely based on shoulder, which is why sometimes I've also had people, when they're unsure, take their cross front adjustment, if we're talking about a set and sleeve garment, because that cross front is the width of the shoulders, the top of the garment. And that shoulder width really needs to be, for a set and sleeve, it really needs to be narrower than your actual shoulders so that the garment stays on, right?
Yep. Yeah, and so that you can lift your arm, frankly. Yeah, and I think that, you know, to further kind of like dig into this, I think that a lot of us will look at a schematic and say, okay, it's a 50-inch bust, 50-inch hip, it's a straight tube. Both of my measurements are smaller than that. I'll fit into that fine. But what we see is that if you have less ease in the hip, your garment will appear to get smaller as you reach the hip. And many of us do not want that silhouette. So thinking about how much ease you have at the bust, or very close to it, and replicating that at the hip. Like, don't go from having 6 inches of ease at the bust to having 1 inch at the hip and not expect it to look tapered. It will look tapered. Go ahead and build yourself in a little bit of additional ease in that hip so that it has a similar skim the entire length of the body so that it doesn't appear to get tighter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, like, a pattern is a starting point. And when people sew, because they use fabric that has much less stretch than knitting, they have to learn how to make all of these adjustments for themselves as they go, because very, very, very few bodies are actually going to fit all of the key measurements in a size chart. It's just not, a size chart is like a bunch of averages, and it's based on data, but that, like, the average data of something, you're not average. You're
None
you.
of us is a stack of data. No, we're real people.
You're
you.
Exactly. So your body is going to be the shape and size that it is. And just checking in with things like the shoulder, the armhole, the bicep, the bust, the waist, the hip. If you look at that schematic and look at those points, then you can start to figure out, like, where you're going to need extra space or less space and how you want to address that. So before we kind of wrap up real quick, what would I do now? This garment is knit. So if I don't want to frog the whole thing and re-knit it, I mean, really, if I really wanted this to look great, I feel like I would need to add bust darts. But even if I did not add bust darts, Jen, what do you think I could do to help myself out if I wanted a quick fix?
Just take that trim off and extend those shoulders and trim it back up and put it on.
Yeah, because I would be happy with a deeper V, and because I need a deeper armhole, but not necessarily a wider armhole, right? Because the armpit width of this is okay because it's based on my upper bust. So I could take the I-cord trim off of the neck and the arms, which is fairly simple. I could unravel the seams at the shoulders, and without even unraveling the rest of it, because I did seam along the sides here, I could just knit an extra inch or even inch and a half to the neck, to the top of the neckline, the top of the shoulder on the front and the back, and then reseam the shoulders and redo the I-cord edging. And then I would be a lot happier with the fit of this. It would still ride up in the front, but it would not sit up as high on my body anyway. So then it might feel less funky. And we'll see. I may actually do that because I do want to get good use out of this garment. And I'm not sure I know anyone that would fit it better than I do. So if I am able to make that adjustment based on how much yarn and how much time I have to do it, I'll circle back and show it to y'all. Cause
That sounds perfect.
Yeah, I want to, because I don't like making something and not using it.
Yeah. We want things in rotation.
Yeah. So we'll see if I'm able to, then we'll all get a little treat sometime in the future. So
love it.
This is our final episode in our launch week, right?
Yeah. So. And then, so we're going to do episodes 1, 2, and 3 days in a row. And we'll have one for you next week.
Yep.
A week from today. And then we'll go to every other week and we'll see how that feels. If we feel like we can do more, maybe we'll go to weekly. We're not committing.
Yeah. Well, we want to make sure we want to be here and have fun with y'all. And we also want to make sure that we set ourselves up for something that makes sense and is sustainable. Yeah. So
can continue to make y'all sweaters and
So what are we doing next week?
I was about to pour more tea. What are we doing next week? Next week, we are going to talk about what we wish we knew. What we wish we knew
as designers. Yep.
It's going to be real chatty.
Yeah. And we've been asking you guys for questions on that, and you have supplied them. So instead of asking you for thoughts and feelings about that, we're going to ask about color theory. So we're going to be talking about color theory, color palettes, how to create an aesthetic, how to choose yarns from garments that have multicolors. I love color. I'm really excited to talk about that. And
you know what I hear from people that we haven't talked about is how to incorporate those variegated yarns that you get because they look so good on the wall. And then you're like, how do I use this single skein of hand-painted yarn? So I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that, and speckles, all of it. So we're going to have plenty to say, but help us say things. Send us your thoughts, send us your questions. And we'd love feedback on this episode. And if you want to come and chat about a garment that you'd like to make or a garment that you have made and you want to chat about fit, let us know that too. If you volunteer, you just might find yourself on one of these episodes with us. So that'd be fun.
Yeah. I hope we do. I love talking to people about the fit in their garments. And, I think when you don't have a background in fitting, it can be a real mystery to try and be like, why is this doing this? Like what, why, where's the extra fabric? Where's there not enough fabric? And I'm hoping that we can get some people to come on and be like in video, and we can be like, okay, gather this up and see, isn't that better? Like, how do you like that? And just like kind of do like a hands-on demonstration here with some fit issues. So
yeah. And honestly, even if you have like a non-knit top that you want to wear and talk about the fit issue, that could help you customize your knitting in the future. Like any and all, we're here for it. And it's like the second half of us saying last episode that like a designer cannot possibly offer every modification that you might need within the pattern. But it doesn't have to be that scary to make them yourselves.
That's right. I agree.
Well,
we did the thing.
We did the thing. We've been having so much fun. I really hope that you are also having fun with us. And if you want to find out more about me, about Jen, or about our work, you can check out our show notes. You'll find our websites, our social, our pattern libraries, all linked there. So yeah, show notes.
Come say hi to us. We want to see you.
And until next time, hope you're enjoying your life.
Happy knitting.
Happy knitting. Bye.